part 2 of Nutnfancy's screen review, and that's all this is a screen review of the Tom Brown Tracker T1. That's the biggest one. I think the T2 version is a little bit smaller. And here we are talking about it. It's talking about how Hollywood generated and created an image of invincibility in the movie The Hunted about the Tom Brown Tracker. And that's all it was, is a false, very false image in my opinion. Tom Brown, the inventor of this blade, the Tom Brown Tracker, was the technical advisor to the movie, and yet I think he allowed he allowed a lot of hype and nonsense about his blade to be, just remain in the movie. It was not edited out. Now, and I don't fault knife makers. You know, movie producers want to sell tickets, knife makers want to sell knives, magazine editors want to sell magazines. There's nothing wrong with that. However, as the consumer, you need to see through this smokescreen of BS. And that's what Nutnfancy's here for, is I'm here to help educate maybe some viewers about the smokescreen of BS, about knives, about guns, about tactical gear, and just plain nonsense. So, what do I not like about the Tom Brown Tracker? A lot. And I don't mean to sound negative, but in comparison to a lot of other blades, the Tom Brown Tracker pretty much comes up short. The reason is, and I'm going to first start with weight. This knife weighs 28 ounces for a 6-inch bladed knife. Now, Tops Knives is the producer for the Tom Brown Tracker, at least as of 2008. They're under a license with Tom Brown to produce it. It's very popular. There's probably a lot of guys watching this that own one. Still don't like it. Sorry to offend you, but I got to keep it real. I'll always be true to my reviewer integrity. If I don't do that, I might as well shut down the Nutnfancy project. It ain't worth crap. I don't like the weight on this. 28 ounces. That's a lot of weight. That's almost 2 pounds. And actually, that's even heavier than this knife. The Ontario SP5 Marine Raider. Look for my review on that. This is a knife. Now that's a knife. Just like Crocodile Dundee said, that's a knife. 10-inch blade, great hacking, slicing, combat capabilities. I have no doubt. Compare it to the Tom Tracker. Guess what? The Tom Tracker weighs an ounce more. You heard it. That's because this thing is a 1/4-inch steel. Now that's if the specifications on their own website are correct. Top's website. By the way, I know they're not correct in one way, and they say this has a 4 1/4-inch blade on the T1. That's actually a 6-inch blade, half of which is dedicated to supposedly chopping, a little less than half, and this portion here is dedicated to slicing tasks. I don't like the weight though. It's very heavy. Now, let me say something for you guys spool, you Tom Brown fans, is I think the Tom Brown Tracker would be an excellent chopper as long as you're chopping in this portion here. It's going to be a very heavy blade with a nice swing to it. I don't have to hold it to even tell you that. I know it. I can look at the specs, I can look at the blade, I can look how it's shaped. I can use my own experience in using knives that were similar to this and hatchets and other tools. It's going to chop well. It's probably an excellent chopping knife as long as you stay within this very limited run of straight edge. Okay, I'll talk about that. So, the weight is ridiculous on this knife. Now, granted, Tom Brown probably wanted some chopping capability, and in that case, the weight's better. But the way this knife was portrayed in The Hunted, did we see it portrayed as a survival knife? No, we did not. We saw it portrayed as a combat knife. That's what he was using it for, is killing people. Truth be told, that's what he was doing. So Tom Brown's is selling his knife as a combat knife in the movie. So let's look at the hype of the movie. How would it be for combat? Well, here we see another version, or actually this is a T1 on the top, if I'm not mistaken, the T2, the smaller version, on the bottom. Okay? I think as a combat knife, I think they are completely inferior. Completely inferior. Because, for one, let's talk about, and there's two terms that Nutnfancy uses, it's survival capability and combat efficiency. I'm going to talk about combat efficiency. Let me back up a bit. We talked about the weight. For 28 ounces, for the larger version, what am I getting in capabilities for combat? Do you get reach? No, you do not. You get a 6-inch blade versus the 10 I just showed you, that Marine Raider knife. What's that, 10-inch blade? That's a lot of reach. Now, some combat specialists that know knives well will sometimes tell you that a shorter blade is what I prefer when I go CQB with a blade. I'm not a knife specialist. I'm not someone who will spend years of my life training to knife fight. I will never do that. To me, a blade is an emergency defensive tool. And if that's the case, and if I know I have a higher propensity of using an emergency defensive tool to save my life, the life of my buddy, my loved ones, my friends, or other good people, I want a longer blade. Reach equals capability in a defensive blade, and the Tom Brown Tracker does not have it. How about slashing capability? Well, yeah, this right here, to be honest, would probably slash pretty good. However, you have this funky grind here, this goofy grind, and this is meant for chopping. So we have a compromised grind on this blade. Half for chopping, half for slicing. So in terms of combat efficiency, if you do a draw stroke on here, aren't you being interrupted by this portion right here? It's not a smooth draw stroke because you're going to use that chopping section, hit that hump, and then you transition over to the curve portion. If you want to slice, have a razor sharp edge and have a long run of that razor sharp edge. As you draw it against your target, you're going to fillet it wide open. The Tom Brown Tracker neither has the length of run, it's only 6 inches, nor does it have the grind that's conducive to a good slash cut. And I'm just, maybe this portion here, if you're just using the tip, okay, but I'm talking a good draw cut starting from the bottom of the hilt all the way through. Then I'm talking about thrust cutting. How about stabbing? I think this is ill-suited for stabbing. It's a big, wide blade that's going to need a lot of power behind it to be effective. Not so good. Little one would be even worse. I think the little one would probably be an okay, larger EDC, but it's heavy too. How about, so combat efficiency, just to cap it off, is not great for the weight, 28 ounces, and I'm talking about the largest one. I mean, you can beat it 7 ways from Sunday. I can think of a dozen knives I'd rather carry than a Tom Brown Tracker if I'm going into combat. Hands down. Something with larger reach, better slash cutting capability, better stabbing capability. The handle's fine. I actually like the handle on the Tom Brown Tracker. I love the micarta handle. I like how they did it. It's handsome. I think it'll provide good traction. I like the finger grooves. I have no criticisms about the handle on the Tom Brown. I think it's excellent. They got a thumb ramp here with jimping on it. That's all good. Pretty much all my criticisms will be leveled at the blade and at the weight. 1/4 inch knife. And again, for combat efficiency, 1/4 inch is way too thick. Way too thick. 3/16 is plenty. Now, if you want both a survival knife and a combat knife, okay, maybe I could see you need a 1/4 inch blade. And that would be along the lines of Cold Steel Recon Scout, maybe the Trailmaster, maybe the K-Bar Heavy Bowie knife. How about survival capability? Well, these are some of the pictures of the Tom Brown Tracker in service, in the out of doors. I think survival capability is very limited. And I'm going to first start with that 6-inch blade. Anytime you have a 6-inch blade, and this might sound like a repeat of what I've said before, and if it does, that's because it is. Anytime you have a 6-inch blade, guess what? You're going to be very limited at what you can baton through. And here we see, even on Tom Brown's own site, he's batoning through a twig. I mean, I could do this with my Swiss Army knife. Seriously. I could take my Rat 1 folder, which happens to be right here, and I could do what he's doing. That's a Rat 1 by Ontario. Seriously, I mean, it's very limited. You don't have the span for a 6-inch blade, and it gets worse. And the way it gets worse is that, again, we get back to the grind on a Tom Brown. It's jacked up. This is not a good batoning grind. For a batoning grind, I want a straight edge. I want enough tip to be protruding through the log so I can hammer it. I don't need this funky, okay, this is where I'm going to chop, this is where I'm going to fillet and slice with. Because as you go through the wood, assuming you're batoning what, a 4-inch piece of wood, that's going to be the limit. You're going to be, this junction right here is going to be right in the middle of the wood. And it's slab-sided. That's another issue I have with the Tom Brown. Don't even get me started on that, is that the radius to the edge starts way down here. This whole portion is flat. I've used blades in the woods and they've gotten stuck in logs, and The reason they have is because they have a long run of flat sides to them. And the Tom Brown Tracker's that way. For survival capability, I can think of, again, another dozen blades I'd rather carry than the Tom Brown Tracker. It's not going to have the capability to span the log and hammer. And what's this about? He says this notches, he uses a saw as a notch. If we look on the site, we see, yeah, he's okay. Where are these pictures? There it is. He's notching down here. It says it produces a nice squared off notch. It probably does. But I think it's pretty much stylized, a Hollywood feature. I don't know. I could be wrong on that. I admit that. I guess it doesn't cost us anything to have a serrated back, so we do have somewhat of a notching capability. And just to summarize, here we see he's using the draw cut of the flat portion of the blade, which you could basically do with any knife. He's batoning the twig again there. He's sharpening. Again, we could do that with a pocket knife. And then he's hacking right here. I don't think he'd be that great of a hacker. Again, I haven't used it in the woods. I could be totally wrong, but I really don't, because the blade's so short. You want a hacker, you watch my outdoor clinic reviews of that SP10 Marine Raider and the other larger survival knives that I have, and you'll see those suckers hack. They have the length of blade, they have the mass, and they have the swing to fall trees. I kid you not. And I've done it already on some of my outdoor clinic videos, and you'll see it again. It takes a lot of energy, and it's not an efficient way to cut wood. You're much better off with a Sawviver, but you can do it. So, survival capability on the Tom Brown Tracker knife. Is it the best survival blade in the world? No. Is it even in the top 10% in Nutnfancy's opinion? No. Way too small. Funky grind limits batoning capability, limits the span of cross logs in order to process your wood for fire and shelter. And then we see this ridiculous sheath option on the Tops website. Have you ever carried a knife this way? And you know why they have this in here? Getting back to the movie The Hunted. The Hunted showed that movie, the dude carrying his knife this way. I tried carrying a knife this way. A fixed blade, it'll last about a day. Try sitting down in your car that way and tell me how you like it. It sucks. There's no way you can conceal it. It's a big blade, and it hurts your back. And it can really hurt your back if you get hit in any way or you take an impact to the lower back. You have that chunk of metal running the span of your spine. Stupid. I never carry it. Maybe a tiny blade, maybe like a Rat 3 is capable of carrying that way. But this knife that's almost 12 inches long, more height. That's just ridiculous. And why? Because guys saw it in the movie. They saw Aaron carrying his blade that way, so it's got to be cool, right? I want to carry my blade that way. I want to be cool. Goodness sake. I got to wrap this up. I could talk all night on this. So what do I not like about it? It's heavy, 28 ounces. It's heavier than even a Marine Raider, for crying out loud. I think it's a poor survival blade. The span's too short. Chopping section's too short. Ridiculous saw section. It's just heavy. I don't want to carry 28 ounces into the woods and have very limited capabilities like I would with the Tom Brown Tracker T1. Again, I might be wrong on this, but I doubt it. Testing would prove it one way or another. How about combat efficiency? It's a poor combat blade. Poor reach. 6-inch blade, that's not the combat knife I want to carry with me. Just because it was in the movie doesn't mean crap. Poor slasher. It's got that junction in the blade. It's not a straight run of razor sharp edge. Poor thrust cutting. I talked about that. By the way, the relief cut is too abrupt for a razor edge. I mean, it just starts, like I said, it doesn't start till about, 3/4 of the way down. You're going to have to back that relief cut up to get a really razor edge on your Tom Brown Tracker. And I'd have to have Fitz and work it over huge. Goofy, limited use grind. It's Hollywood styling. That curve makes it hard to resharpen, too. Good luck trying to sharpen that front. The curve portion. Too expensive for a $10.95 blade. Seriously, over $200. Even if you got it for $180, you're getting ripped off. Tom Brown Tracker. No thanks. I don't want it. Too heavy. Goodness sakes. Anatomy of hype? You bet. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That they want to sell movies. I understand that. I'm hip to that. But don't let them sell you a knife in the process. Overpriced, overweight, limited capability. That's a Tom Brown Tracker knife. It is definitely That's another review I'll do. It's definitely the anatomy of hype. This is Nutnfancy. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned something. Thanks a lot for the support and the 5 stars. Appreciate it.